Talking about RD transmissions here today. This one's a 400 bottom end, 350 RD transmission, with the exception of the input shaft here. The input shaft is RD400 because I have an RD400 clutch I want to use. So I transferred everything from here on over. This is all RD350. This is the standard, complete, unaltered RD350 output shaft. I think the shift drum and shift forks are all RD400, though I'm not even sure at this point. I think the 350, 400, 6-speed forks are the same, but whatever, right? So you read a lot of stuff on the internet, like what I really want to talk about. I see a lot of people talking about how great the 400 6-speed is, and it's kind of dumb. And if I can explain why. The only thing really, if you look at some of the magazines, like Cycle World, they had a couple of tests where they showed the overall gear ratio. I probably have some in the house I could whip out if I was prepared to be recording this. But the best thing about the 400 6-speed is it's got a tall first gear, which is great. I like a nice tall first gear, especially if you got a nice torquey motor. These 400s make pretty good torque, especially with the 2VO top ends. That's got to be my favorite top end for these things. But you look at the actual gears themselves. Again, this is a 350. Except for the first gear on the input shaft is a 400. The reason why you can mix the first gear from the 400 with the first gear for the 350 is because all of these transmissions, the RD400, RD350, and even the R5, the early 5-speed piston port 350, they all have the same first gear ratio, identical. So that's kind of the only issue that I have with the 400 is like, yeah, that first gear, that tall first gear looks great, but it's not even first gear. It's the final drive. I think they run 1736 gears on those things. The RD350 is a 1540 final drive. So as far as that tall first gear goes, it's not even in the gearbox. It's in the final drive. So looking at that, it's like, well, geez, what's the point? You know, the 400 6-speed has a real close ratio, 4, 5, and 6. The 350 RD, the reed valve 6-speed, has a slightly wider ratio, 4 to 5 and 5 to 6. It's got the tallest 6-gear ratio. The 400 is not as tall. It's not a huge difference. It's like 3%. But so yeah, first gear's the same. Actually, like first, second, and third in the 350 and 400 are identical. Fourth, fifth, and sixth are closer in the 400s, but they just the gears are closer together. It's not like you have a taller overall 6-gear ratio. You know, I guess I can see the point if you're racing on a track. You got a real narrow power band, you're piped, you're ported, maybe for that application, the 6-speed they use in the RD400 makes sense. But on the street, as you're riding it, I've ridden these things before. I've had a few. Right now, I got actually what I'm running right now, believe it or not, is an R5 piston port 5-speed in this RD400. And I kind of like it. I like it better than the RD400, honestly, because 4 and 5 and 5 and 6 are less than 10% apart in the 400 6-speed. In the R5, it's a great gearbox overall. The only thing I don't like about the R5 that I'm running right now is the 1 to 2 shift. It's I think it's 39% lower, whereas in these 6-speeds, the 1 to 2 is only 31% lower. So there's a bit of a gap in the R5 5-speed transmission going from 1 to 2. Now 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, I can't complain. They're perfectly good ratios. 4 to 5 might be a little too much of a jump, but really if you're running a stock motor, stock pipe, stock porting, it's not bad. What I really like though, these 350 6-speeds, that's got to be the best one, despite what all the chuckleheads on the internet have to say. I've ridden these things. The one, it's actually in that big old box over there. That's an RD250 bottom end, but the RD250, RD350, they have the same 6-speed ratio. The 250's got a different primary ratio. It's a little bit shorter. But yeah, the like 73 through 75, 250, 350, same gear ratios. I think the 76 through 78 RD400, if you can find an RD250 from that period, the 250 and 400 are the same. I think those only went to Canada and Europe or something. In the US, we just got the 400 to the best of my knowledge. But so yeah, the best of the bunch, and I've ridden them all. The R5's pretty good. That 1 to 2 gap is a bit much, but really for street riding, if you're not banging gears, it's not bad. The 350 reed valve gearbox or the you know, the RD, basically call it the RD250 350, 73 to 75 6-speed. It's my favorite. You got a good, reasonable 1, 2, 3, you know, set of ratios. You can make first gear as tall as you want, since again, this it's all in the output. 4, 5, and 6, they're closer than the 4 and 5 on the R5 transmission, but they're not so close that it's irritating, like the 400. If you've ever ridden the 76 or 78 400, I think even the 79 400F has the same issue, where you shift from 4 to 5 and your RPM only drops a couple hundred. Then you go 5 to 6, and again, your tack goes from here to here. It's like, it's the same gear, you know, and it's kind of silly, especially for street riding. So this is kind of what I recommend. Despite, again, you read on the internet, oh yeah, the one guy said the 350 6-speed ratios were quote unquote terrible or awful or something along those lines. And that's just absurd, because again, I've ridden them. That's what's in that box over there. Again, that's a RD350 6-speed, and for the street, you can't beat it. There's nothing better. Even for the track, hell, I'm guaranteeing you could race that thing, and geez, I've stepped on a rod bearing. Even on the track, unless you got a razor thin power band, which is a separate issue. You know, you would tune to avoid that, I would think, you know. But yeah, the 350 is where it's at. And again, considering this is a 400 input shaft, first gear is, I don't think it's removable. Maybe it is, but you'd really have to, it's either made onto the shaft or it's pressed on. I think it's part of the shaft. I think it's like, hell, I just had it apart, I should know. Yeah, you can't do anything about that. But fortunately, the only difference, if you have the 350, the clutch, I think this portion of the clutch, the spline is different. The 350 clutch has a fine spline. The 400 clutch has a coarse, it's like a 6-spline type of deal. And I think the shaft might be longer too. I'm not sure about that. I know the splines are the primary thing. So if you have a 400 clutch, you're going to need this shaft. If you want to put a complete 350 transmission in, it all just drops in. You're going to need a 350 clutch as well. If you're putting a 400 transmission in a 350 motor, the 400 side cover has a little bit more room, because there's an issue over here. I know I've read about that. I've never run into it because I've never used a 400 clutch in a 350 motor, but you might have to worry about the total stack height of the clutch. I think when you engage the clutch and it pushes out that pressure plate, it might hit the ribs on the casting and that inner clutch cover. But anyway, this is the one I like. Really, it's top notch. You do the math, you know, you count the teeth up, get your ratios. I think it's again, the 6th gear is the tallest overdrive. So as far as cruising highway speeds at a moderate, reasonable RPM, this is what you want. The RD350 6-speed. It's like a 0.786 ratio. I forget the primary, and your second or your final drive, you can run whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But so yeah, this is the one, if you ask me. Despite, again, all the advice and all the wisdom on the internet, which is often bullshit. And if you've never seen how an RD tranny works, that's what we got right here. This is a little bit unusual, because when this is assembled, you see this axial play. When the clutch is on, this is pulled all the way to the right. And when the sprocket is installed and this is torqued down, that's pushed all the way to the left. So in operation, that's how it runs. Bench testing it really doesn't matter that much. The dogs do, you know, there's a tolerance there that, again, bench testing it, it's working. It's no big deal. We can still go through all the gears. You see that was, I believe, 4th just popped in. And another turn, 3rd gear's down there. I think that's this guy right here, 3rd gear. There it goes, there goes 3rd. And this is a good thing to do if you're ever assembling one of these things. Now's the time to make sure your shift detent mechanism is working properly. There goes 2nd gear. And a properly working shift detent mechanism will complete the shift, even if you end up hitting the, if the dogs come together, like if you look up here, if the shift dogs clash and they're not lined up where they can just properly drop in, like let's do 2nd gear. If we go to 2nd gear, I think if I go like this, there's neutral. And this one's been tuned up a little bit. I've got these shift detent mechanisms modified for this because the stalker is not great. But if you see here, we're going to go from neutral to 2nd gear. The shift detent mechanism being modified is, even from neutral, able to lock up that, there it goes. Even from neutral, it's able to lock up. And what that means is, if you're shifting, coming off of a stop, you're going to shifting across neutral, the stock shift detent mechanism, which, what do you know, I got one right here. See, it's got that large cutout right here. So when you're shifting across this, if the shift dogs clash in 2nd gear, it's going to bounce off and it's probably going to fall right back into that detent. And that happens to me occasionally on the street, and it's irritating, and I hate it. Maybe I'll pull this thing out. Jeez, it's such a bear to pull out. Basically, what I did was, to rectify this, so these things, you see how it's got that little pin locates the shift star. What I did was I rotated this thing. One of these lobes is unused. Yeah, so it's that guy right there. I cut a new notch, much shallower. So this is the original notch. I cut a much shallower notch in this one. And I cut a new keyway. So instead of being right there, it's actually right there. So I positioned the old, or something like that. Jeez, it's easy to get confused with the details here. Basically, I put the old neutral position right there. The new neutral's right here. So you shift from 1 to 2, and you rotate this around. And the old shift, neutral shift position is between 1 and 6, and it never crosses over that. And that's what's installed here. So the whole idea with that was I'm tired of catching neutral when I try to upshift, and it's just not, it's not happy with it. So yeah, there's third gear. We go up to fourth gear. Fourth gear's on the input shaft. 4, 5, and 6 are all up there on the input shaft. There you go. You saw it pop in there. Fifth gear. Fifth gear just plugged right in. Sixth gear. Okay, there's 6. Yeah, 4, 5, and 6 are all up here. 1, I think that's 2, and that's 3 on the output shaft. But yeah, that's all there is to it. Modifying the shift detent mechanism is a bitch because it's as far in here as you can go. The gear sets come out, no big deal. Then your shift shafts come out. It's these guys over here. You got to pull those little plugs out. This is all just, I'm testing it to see if that gearbox is going to work, and I think it is. So I haven't put any of the circlips that retain those shafts, but yeah, that's the RD 6-speed. That's when it's working well, it's an excellent transmission. When it's not happy, it just ruins it. The motorcycle is, it just really takes about 50% of the fun out of riding it when you're missing shifts, when you got false neutrals. And the false neutrals with these gearboxes are always right there. Let's see which gear if I can find it. I think that's 5th, so I probably won't be able to show you 5th. Yeah, that was 5th. And again, when you put the clutch on, that axial play is locked up and it moves fully to the right. Let me see if I can just demonstrate. I think this will show you a false neutral right here. Yeah. So with the stock shift detent mechanism, it is prone to, you see these dogs right here. The dogs clash, they're not lined up. The stock shift detent mechanism, which is this rounded star here, it'll park the detent pin right on the top of one of these lobes, and it's got a substantial dead spot across there. It's probably, I don't know, 20, 30 degrees of rotation, where the detent pin doesn't have enough leverage over this to actually complete the shift. So what happens is you go for the shift, and the dogs clash, and it'll just sit there. Of course, this one isn't going to have that problem because it's been fixed. And that's what causes your false neutrals. If it doesn't drop in, it'll kick it back out, or maybe it'll catch just by the corner of the dog, and it'll pop it back off. And it'll sit there and park between gears, and sometimes it'll spin and make awful grinding noises as those dogs kind of skim off of each other. So that's one thing that is really, it's the Achilles heel of these RD transmissions, and man, it's a bitch to work on. But you see how well this one's working. Again, watch third gear. Third gear pops in, and that's basically when you call for the shift, the detent mechanism finishes the shift. Oh boy, there's first gear. So as opposed to you sitting there having to hold your foot against the shifter until it throws, you know, the dogs and lines up. Yeah, there's neutral, no dogs engaged. If we go up to second, it's a lot easier if I can hold the output. There we go. Yeah, even from neutral, that's the improvement, because the stock shift star and detent pin, they don't do that. They will park in neutral. There's not enough ramp on that shift gear, the shift star and the shift detent pin. They have dead spots. You know? So you'll hit neutral for sure. You'll hit all kinds of issues, like right here. If this is going to be a problem, the shift detent mechanism wouldn't be able to do that. But the way it's supposed to work is you request the shift, you release the shift lever, the detent mechanism, when it can, watch fourth gear, there goes fourth gear. As soon as the shift detent mechanism can engage the gear, as soon as the dogs rotate relative to each other, as soon as there's room, as you can see, they'll pop in. That's how it's supposed to work. And a lot of these from the factory were marginal, a little iffy, and they don't get better with age. Actually, they get worse as those shifts. If you miss a few shifts, if it slips out of gear a few times, it will round off these shift dogs. And that's one of the first things I look at when I'm trying to gauge the health of one of these transmissions. There's a certain angle, you can kind of see it there, a bevel almost. Some have a bevel, some have maybe a square edge. Like, yeah, you can see over there, that one's got a bit of a bevel on it. That bevel will round off and it'll turn into just a ruined gear set. And once it's rounded off to the extent where it's more likely to kick the dogs back out than it is to let them pop in, then you're just going to have a gear that's really hard to get. And that, you know, after a few missed shifts, or if it sits between gears and they're just grinding each other, that's going to tear them up quick. So this is a while you're in there kind of thing. You want to fix it before it really starts to cause problems, because once it's popping out of gear, that transmission's cooked. You're going to have to figure out which dogs are rounded off, and you can look for bent shift forks. And I've seen bent shift forks. The R5 tranny I've gotten the 400 in there actually had a bent shift fork, and that's caused by improper, incomplete shifting. When it throws the shift mechanism back, like when it pops the dogs off and slips out of gear under power, that's what tends to bend shift forks, you know. So if you fix that before it happens, you're way better off. You're way ahead of the game. I might have to make another video about what I did to fix the shift detent mechanism, but you can kind of see it down there. I'm actually using a real fancy one on this one. That's not the standard RD shift star. That's actually out of an XS, like a 400. But the big difference is the profile. You can kind of see that has more of a pointed star, whereas these early ones, the RD ones, they're rounded. And the problem with that is it's got a lot of leverage as soon as it gets into the steep portion of the ramp, but it's got that substantial dead spot here across the middle where the shift detent mechanism is inefficient, it's ineffective. And if everything is perfect in one of these gearboxes, you're not going to have a problem. But with time, even if they were good and they're new, if there's some marginal tolerances, you may find later on that your transmission is going to develop issues. So you have to get all the way into it. Again, you got to pull these shift shafts come out. You actually have to, there's a snap ring, this little snap ring right here, actually you can see it. You have to take the snap ring off before you can even get the goddamn shift drum out. So it's a real bear. It can be done, it must be done. In conjunction with the shift star modifications. You can either use the XS, I think it's XS 400, XS 650, I forget which one. You can look for one of those. It's a 6-pointed star, but again, it's got the rounded profile to it. Or you can get the early RD shift star, and you can just reprofile it. You can grind it. I actually got one in here that I don't know, I kind of keep some on hand because I got so many of these projects. I got a DT360 that has the same mechanism in it. This is what you can do with the original shift star. See, it's the same thing. You reprofile it. There's the stock profile there and the modified profile. You see, you kind of sharpen it up. Well, again, all you're trying to do is reduce the dead zone on top where the shift detent pin is just parked. And this one here, if you're at 12 o'clock, it's still going to be a dead spot, but if you're at least a few degrees past that and the cam, if the pin can ride down that ramp and finish the gear shift, that's what you want. The other aspect of this, you modify the shift detent pin as well. I don't have one of those on hand. The one I have that I just finished reshaping is installed in that bottom end right there. Not really, I mean, it's all just kind of thrown together, but yeah, if I had one on the bench here I could show you, I would. But basically, it's pretty easy to figure out. The stock pin is kind of blunted, like worse than my pinky finger. If you can put a flat top on that, the stock pin is just, it's not a good profile. And it doesn't work very well. Man, I'm sure I got one up here somewhere. I got a little bit of everything. Who knows? Yeah. So yeah, you can, if you look, you can find the shift detent pin for the XS, whatever XS it is. They made a different pin to fit that new reprofiled star. So you can either buy that pin, or you can get your pin and kind of sharpen it so it's got, I'll tell you what, I'll draw. I wonder if this will work. For the sake of YouTube, I'm going to draw it on my wall. Okay, so here's your stock pin. And no shit, and it's not to scale, but stock pin looks like that. Terrible. Don't do that. What you can do is you can grind it, right? Grind it, round it. I try to get as much of a gonna make it look like a bullet, you know. So basically, you reprofile it so it's got kind of like a something. Ooh, that's actually pretty good. I think it's called a. That's the shape we're looking for. I don't know how to pronounce it, but so yeah, there's your stock pin. You see, it's got the shoulders. You knock those shoulders off and you shape it like that. And these things have little flutes on them, little spiral flutes. But anyway, that's what your stock detent pin looks like. And that's what you do to it. You want to put as much of a point as you can on it. So the shift interface between the shift star, you got your star, which has got like a point like that. You're trying to minimize the dead zone right here. So that's kind of the whole point. The stock star with its rounded, you got a wider dead zone, especially with a blunt pin. This pin on that star works like shit. I was probably recording over here the whole time. Anyway, you reshape your shift star, you reshape your shift detent pin. This is what you want. This is the trick. This works really well. An SC500 motor that I put together, that was a 4-speed, but it used the same exact shift mechanism. Even you know, it's a 4-speed, but it still used the 6-pointed shift star. That one was awful. It wouldn't shift. I thought there was something wrong with it, like really significantly wrong with it. It would miss gears, it would jump third and go into fourth. So, and of course on a 4-speed, that's a pretty huge gap. The only thing I did to that transmission was shift detent modifications. Pulled the cases apart, reprofiled the shift star, put an improved shift detent pin in it, and it was flawless. It was it went from a awful, terrible, horrible, no good transmission to one of the best. I mean, it was, like I said, it was flawless. It just did what it was supposed to do, which is great. That's all you expect, especially out of a 4-speed. These 6-speeds are a little more finicky because you just have less room between each set of shift dogs. There's a minimum amount of space, so the more gears you have in here, the less free space you have available for clearance, you know. And so yeah, these are tough. You got to tune them, but man, it's worth it. Once you get a good transmission that you don't have to worry about, you don't have to hope it's going to get a gear. You don't have to worry about downshifting. My old 400 that I had a few years back, that thing was, God, it was terrible. I took it up to the mountains one time, and I was trying to get up some of these hills at highway speeds, and the motor is pretty much stock, so it was losing a little bit of power with this high altitude too. It's about 6,000 feet up here, so the 400 is really breathing hard. So I had to downshift to get up a hill, and I think it was either between 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, and I'm just losing speed trying to get up this hill, stomping on the gear shifter, trying to get it to find some gear to put some power down, and so I don't get run over. Stuff like that just ruins the experience, and you know, these are kind of prone to it, so you really got to do the work. If you're ever in a bottom end doing you know, bottom end rebuild or even just crank seals, whatever it is, if you have the opportunity to rectify the situation, geez, I'm just dropping stuff all over. But yeah, if you have the opportunity, this pays dividends in reliability. It's going to reduce or eliminate any chance of your transmission rounding off shift dogs and developing problems later on in the future. And you're going to enjoy it in the meantime because it's just going to work the way it's supposed to. And that's, geez, that's all anybody ever wanted from these. You just want a nice bike that runs good and is a pleasure to ride. So it's overlooked, it's unappreciated, but yeah, regardless of the gear set you use, whether it's the 350 or the 400, again, 350 is my favorite. The 133 are the same as the 400. 4, 5, and 6 are just way better for street riding. That 400 close ratio stuff, they're a little too close. It's kind of silly, you know. But either way, either transmission is going to benefit from a properly functioning shift detent mechanism. So, you know, there's really that's kind of beside the point. Whichever way you go, you make sure you do the shift detent tune-up. And man, it's just, like I said, it's the best thing you can do for one of these bikes, because it's man, talk about a kneecap. You know, when you're afraid to ride the bike, you're afraid to grab a gear, you don't want to go out there and haul ass and bang gears because you're not sure if you're going to embarrass yourself and hit a false neutral and over-rev the hell out of it. Yeah, it's no good. It takes the fun out of it. So that's I guess that's pretty much it. I just wanted to make my piece on that because I read so much on the internet again about gear ratios and back cutting shift dogs, and it's like, man, you don't really need to do that. All you got to do is get the shift detent mechanism. You optimize it. You know, stock, it's not great. You can make it work better. You don't need to machine these things. Shimming, yeah, sure, if you have issues, like if your tolerances are out of whack here, if you have improper positioning, right? And you can look at that when you're putting these things together. This one was fine. I didn't really need to change anything. There's the shim here on the output between the gear set and the bearing. There's a shim there. Same thing here. I think there's a shim between the first gear and then the bearing there. So if the shims are good, if your tolerances are good, if it works good on the bench, it's going to work good on the bike. So just don't put it back together as is, because man, you're going to regret it. Maybe not now, but eventually it's going to start missing gears. And I've seen it. I think more. I've had I don't know, 5 or 6 RDs. More of them had transmission problems than didn't. So, and they're not getting any better again. So don't be afraid. It's not a big deal. You just got to really fix it before it develops any serious issues, and you're going to be way ahead. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that helps somebody. Again, I'm Team 350 6-speed for sure. Those guys on the internet don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I don't see anybody talking about shift detent mechanisms, which is the weirdest thing, because that's all these 70s Yamahas. Again, the DTs, the RTs, the SC, the MX, of course, all the RDs, they all had the same thing until the early 80s, and they started doing them differently. This is the biggest issue. All those models are handicapped with this crappy shift detent mechanism. Some of them, it's a real bear to fix, like these RDs. Man, you really got to get up in those guts. But anyway, hopefully this inspires you to put it on your to-do list, because it's free. You don't even have to buy parts. You can just grind them. That's what I do. Get the Dremel out and I go to town, reprofile everything. Half-hour of work, of actual work as far as what you're fixing. All the rest is getting in here. So it's not so bad though. These are pretty sweet to work on. I don't mind it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Check back for more RD videos. I spend so much time in here building shit and so little time recording, and I'm trying to get some of this on here, get them views going, get some of that Google money. Anyway, see you next time.